hello, Mitch. Oh, what's that, Mitch? You've made the selection on the randomizer today? And it's one of the best episodes of UFO? And you've pushed Marina down the well? Huh. Well, first things first, it's time for Confetti check A-O.K. And then we'll see about that well. And straight away we know that this is quite an unusual episode of UFO because we don't have the opening title sequence on this one, which I think was done because the episode was just overrunning, and there's a later episode, the Psycho Bombs, that also overran, so the easiest thing to cut was the opening titles. But it's rather appropriate that this episode doesn't have the traditional UFO opening, because it's not really a traditional UFO episode. Even though some things never changed, lots of cigar smoking in the control room today, even more than usual.
Come on, Straker. Have a cigar, sir.
Oh, thank you, Gray. Thank you. What's the
It's only
occasion?
my fifth one today.
Just became a father.
Congratulations. A boy or girl?
Twins.
Twins, huh? And you owe me another cigar.
Although I still don't know whether it was a boy or girl.
Yeah, funny after waiting so long. Everything seemed to happen so fast. We got down to the hospital, they didn't want to let us in. Well, we got in anyway. She was only in the operating theatre about it.
I'm fascinated by it. I want to know how they got in. The hospital didn't want to let them in. How did they get in anyway? Anyway, Commander Straker's having a bit of a reflective moment, because he's thinking of another time he had a cigar at his wedding, and that's where we are now. Back in presumably 1970-ish something.
That was a toast. What, another one?
Yeah.
What to this time?
Champagne.
So this is the return appearance of Suzanne Neve's Straker's wife's Mary, even though in chronological order this is the first time we see her. And I don't know if this wedding sequence is before or after the Rolls-Royce crash in the first episode. If it's before, then this is probably the earliest chronological moment of the entire series, is Straker and Mary's wedding day, which we know from later episodes didn't work out so well. And here's the story of how that all went down.
Where are you going, Ed?
I'll be with you in a minute.
And one of the many, many reasons I love this episode, and I'm not going to lie, I do love this episode, is the fact that they make full use of the flashback idea to show how much the characters evolved and changed, and in particular, Straker.
Ed,
What?
there's a car coming!
It's all right. We probably don't know them.
Because Straker in these flashback scenes, he's so cheerful, and oh, okay, that's interesting. So the random passerby in the car who slowed down to sort of get a look at the hat that Mary was wearing there actually ended up working in Shadow Control later on.
New suit. New wife.
New husband? New life.
But it's so nice to see Ed Bishop given a slightly different character to play here. There's a version of Straker who's still got that little bit of, there's a little bit of joy in him. There's a little bit of optimism that's missing throughout much of the rest of the series. And of course, this is the episode where we find out why all that happened. It's
Confetti check.
as much as it is wonderful to explore the backstory of this show, how everything was set up. I think the highlight for me is Ed Bishop's performance in this, as it is throughout the whole show, in fact.
I have a reservation.
For my wife and I. Mr. and Mrs. Straker.
So in the HD version, which I'm watching this episode on, we can see calendar in the hotel lobby, or by the desk there. Looks to be either October, November. The picture on the calendar is of a village with a lot of snow on it, but I'm sure that says either October, November. So we're near the end of whichever year this is set in. I'm going to assume 1970. Oh, slightly closer. Oh, I still can't make out the word on that.
Oh, come on, Ed.
No.
Where are we going?
Well, now, let me see. I got the tickets right here. I just can't make out what they say. Now let me see. London, England to... No, I just can't make out that definition. No. Could be anywhere. Let me see.
And considering that the last time they worked together, Ed Bishop and Suzanne Neve, they were playing two characters who were very cold, very distant towards each other, and ultimately concluded that episode with the absolute destruction of any kind of relationship between the two of them. They are both playing such a warm, believable couple.
Compliments of the management, sir.
Throughout this episode, there's a really genuine
That's quite all right, sir.
love and affection between the two of them. It's all so beautifully done.
Confetti check?
Yeah, we blew it.
Go away.
Now, I first saw UFO when the BBC repeated it in, I think, 1995 they started repeating it. And I was quite late to the idea of recording episodes off TV, so I didn't have much on video when I was a kid. I was so impressed by the previous episode of UFO that I'd seen that this was the episode from which I started to record them on tape. And as a kid, I was so disappointed with this episode. It was just, where were the spaceships, where were the aliens, where were the cool vehicles and all the rest of it, but you had absolutely none of it here. Now, as an adult, this is...
Well, come on, darling.
You.
If not my favourite, then certainly in the top three.
Just happened to find a couple of tickets on the floor.
And of course the previous episode to this one, the one that had inspired me to start recording them on video, was Close Up, which I for some reason loved as a kid. We'll get into that more if Close Up ever turns up, but yeah, what was I thinking? Close Up, spectacular. This one, The Pits. No. And speaking of the Pits, just before they're going to board the flight for their honeymoon, Straker is being called away by a little grey man in a little grey suit.
What's wrong, darling?
I have to see General Henderson. Now.
It's all right, darling. I understand.
I'm so sorry, sweetheart.
And again, just going by a question of priorities, you could maybe look at Mary and see that she...
It's all right. I married a colonel in the military intelligence.
that she treated Straker unfairly, but this episode shows that no, not only was she very patient and very willing, she really tried her best to make this work. And again, that's part of the real tragedy, not only of this episode, but the whole series and the Straker character is just
Well, how are they treating you, sir?
good intentions that yielded just disaster after disaster.
Yes, that's what you need in this job. An understanding wife.
Okay, so this is after the Rolls-Royce crash, so it wasn't quite the earliest we've seen chronologically.
A lot of it's going to fall on your shoulders. The Special Committee of United Nations meets day after tomorrow. We get the go, no-go decision then.
And you want me to be there?
Now, who else?
And it's odd that they reference the car crash. General Henderson is injured. We didn't even know from the first episode whether he survived or not. But there's no mention made of the fact that Straker would have been in a car crash around this time. Not long before his wedding. Did Mary know anything about that? I mean, we saw he was, coughing up blood. Did he have any internal injuries? We don't find out. Oh, but even back in the day, he still had that old destruct negative attaché case. And that's a brief cameo from Shane Rimmer checking his papers.
Would you turn around, Colonel?
There's also Mike Stevens sat at the desk there, and of course both of them ended up working for SHADO as well. There's a lot of people in this episode who ended up working for SHADO.
Straker. Gentlemen, first of all, I should like to apologize on behalf of General Henderson for his absence. As you probably know, he's still recovering from injuries he received in the car crash.
Thank you, Colonel. No doubt you will make an excellent substitute.
I also admire with this show how they don't sort of...
for us to proceed is by a process...
They call back... They mention things like the car crash, but they don't explain to newcomers what this actually... What car crash we're referring to. We know it's the one from the very first episode, but that was like 16 weeks ago in broadcast order. It's surprising that they would expect people to know that, but...
absolutely necessary. And if it is, are we getting
props to
value
them for
money?
respecting their audience enough to remember something like that.
I believe the setting up of SHADO is not only necessary, but absolutely vital.
Fleet of submarines? Base on the moon?
Satellites?
I love that of the three things on that list, it's satellites that gets the most baffled reaction from that delegate. Not, fleet of submarines based on the moon, that's fine, but satellites? Whereas now today we're like, maybe you could have a fleet of submarines. You can have the satellites, no problem, but a base on the moon? No, we haven't done that yet.
We need to defend ourselves.
And how long will it take to set up this defense organization?
We estimate 7 to 10 years.
How is SHADO to be organized regarding personnel?
On strictly military lines, we hope to recruit the best people available.
And if that doesn't work, I'll hire that guy who drove past my wife earlier. I'm fairly flexible on the personnel thing.
Band of heroes.
Well, there's no question in my mind, gentlemen. There's only one man for the job. General Henderson. He's the obvious choice.
Any further questions?
It's also nice this scene to see the beginnings of that steely Straker. We've seen the happy, cuddly Straker, and now we're seeing the slightly more familiar Straker, the military officer.
Monsieur Duval, I understand you have 3 daughters.
Yes.
Could I borrow one?
I pray that you never find yourself looking down at one of their mutilated bodies. I hope that the next UFO incident is not in your hometown.
Ooh.
Thank you for your time.
He's going to put that on a Christmas card later this year.
They appointed the commander-in-chief.
Who?
You. Again, it was unanimous. It seems the French delegate, Duval, was particularly insistent.
Oh, God, now I've got to protect his daughters. I don't even know where they live.
You can always refuse. But if you do, it's got to be now. There'll be no turning back later.
And that's one of the great what-if moments of the UFO timeline. I think if Straker had said no, or if the delegates had appointed General Henderson as per Straker's recommendation, how differently things would have gone in Straker's life, and how differently SHADO itself might have turned out. But already we're seeing the cracks beginning to form between Straker and Mary.
I love you.
And I suppose I can be fair to myself and think, yeah, as a kid, we're now seeing Straker and Mary looking at houses. It's not the most thrilling. I can understand a younger viewer not being too impressed by this, but the fact that this episode exists is...
Yes.
I think it's just absolutely crucial to the series, this one. And we don't get to see those sort of like backstory type episodes in any other Anderson series, really. I would love to know the sort of thought process that brought this one up. Was it just we need something a bit cheaper? Well, I can't imagine it was too cheap to make, because we've got to make all this...
Had a busy day.
All these, well, like the Straker's home. We've got to sort of rip the guts out of the Shadow Control set.
Well, I'm sorry, I have to work.
And of course, this is an episode written by Tony Barwick,
Get your supper.
who I've previously credited quite heavily for being one of the silliest writers of the Anderson universe. I mean, you look at any episode of Terrorhawks or Dick Spanner to see that confirmed. So this is a very surprisingly serious, well, not serious, but more straight episode. There are moments of levity and lightness between the characters, but ultimately it's all going to spiral into despair and heartbreak.
Glad to know you, Freeman. Welcome to SHADO.
Thank you, sir.
I've been kicked up here to keep a fatherly eye on you. I'll be holding the purse strings.
Well, that sounds like it could be a lot of fun.
I also wonder how much of this is perhaps based on real life, with the with any, if the relationship between Straker and Mary is in any way comparable to the relationship between Jerry and Sylvia, because I think Jerry has said more than once that the A Question of Priorities was kind of based on sort of, you know, him having to juggle his priorities between being a producer of a series and being a husband and a father. And I'm just wondering if the fact that Straker and Mary's relationship disintegrates over the course of this episode, if any of that was based on what Tony Barwick knew was going down at the time.
I suppose the next step will be is you won't bother to come home at all.
Now, that's not a bad idea. Then maybe when I did get home, I'd get a decent reaction from my loving wife.
Oh, ow. Oh, and again, both Ed Bishop and Suzanne Neve are just playing this absolutely beautifully.
I didn't mean that.
And you can understand the feelings and the anger and frustration on
I need a break.
On both sides.
What do you say we go out next week sometime and paint the town red?
And as much as I didn't like this one as a kid, because, as I said, very stupid kid, I wish we could have had more like this through the series. I think the fact that the episodes were being shown in a largely random order for most regions would have prohibited any kind of ongoing character stuff like this. So the only way you can really do it is as a one-off. However, the fact that we have this
Nearly finished.
not only is such a great character piece, but also shows the meticulous setting up of the entire Shadow organization, which we never saw in any other series. And it's something we would all love to see, the setting up of International Rescue or Spectrum or whoever. But that just has to be left to our imaginations. But with this, we get a fully...
I hear they're installing a voice print identification mechanism.
A fully realised
the prototype last week.
look back that touches on so many issues like that, like the voice print identification. I think the show would be a lot poorer for not having this episode. And I also love this moment. We go from the happy world of upstairs to... Yeah, here we go. We're down. We're in the bunker. There's that familiar music. And there's the familiar Shadow HQ corridor. But of course everything's been... They've had to rip all the guts out of the set because this is the point where it's being built. Electricians are in, putting up wiring. And I've always wondered what set designers think when they get a script like this, where they have to take an established set and totally change it. Either it's like a version from a parallel universe, or in this case it's a past version, or it's a future version. Do they sort of like, oh good, a challenge, or do they think, oh no, we've got to rip all that stuff off and change this and pull that out? And but it is great to see it all sort of half finished like this.
It's all beginning to take shape.
Yes, this is it. Shadow HQ.
They haven't even got the drinks machine in yet. Yeah, Alec is looking into that corner where the drinks machine would be.
How's Mary?
Mary? She's problem number one.
Want to trade her in for a new model, Alec? You can do that, can't you?
I want to tell her.
You can't do that.
She's got to know, Alec. She's got to realize how important all this is, how much time it takes.
You want to risk her life? That's just what you'd be doing, you know. Well, you know what our security boys are like. Make the CIA look like a bunch of Sunday school teachers. If you told Mary and they found out, the security of all this, billions of dollars, it outweighs any individual. You, me, Mary, anybody.
And that, again, is another what-if moment. If Straker had told Mary, or just given her some indication of what was going on and how important all this was, because there are several moments in the second half of this episode where I just like, tell her, go on, please tell her. But of course you can't, and you wonder if she would have believed a word of it, or if the security boys would have got rid of her. Because I think there's a deleted line in the script from that point where Freeman tells Straker that the limo driver or the Rolls-Royce driver who survived the crash in Identified was subsequently bumped off by Shadow security, which I wish they'd left in, because that was another sort of, you know, it would have established very early on that Shadow was a rather ruthless and unscrupulous organisation in certain
The day
fields.
before that.
Drink?
You know I don't drink, Mary.
This is, an occasion.
And he's only just realised that she's wearing a dress and she's got flowers out.
You mean... Oh. Here, you...
And again, this is such lovely playing from Ed Bishop.
I have to make a phone call.
Suddenly treating Mary as though she's...
No, I have to get onto that decorator
might
fellow.
blow
Get him
away
here
in a
to
slight
do up that
breeze.
nursery, painted blue.
Pink.
So there we go. That's hopefully going to bring Straker and Mary closer together again. Going to fix everything. Going to have a baby. Everything will be fine. That's not going to result in any problems anywhere down the line.
We don't seem to be able to find the fault, sir.
Well, keep checking. And don't look at me like that. You're not the only one with a home to go to.
Actually, I don't have a home, sir. I just live here. Please, can I go home with you, sir? And once again, Mary has another long night on her own.
Put me through the supply.
Reading a magazine that seems to have misspelt the word comfort. They spelt it comfort.
He confirmed the first week in April.
First week in April for a... Wait, I'm still confused about the timeline of your marriage. When did you guys get married?
I know, Mother, but...
The calendar... I'm sure the calendar said October, November.
No,
You've been very quick there.
No,
with that baby.
Silly. Of course there's not another woman. No.
Unless we've already passed by like a year by this point. It's a bit hard to tell.
Bye.
It's a bit hard to tell how long a period of time all this takes place over, but Mary's mother has put the idea in her head that Ed might be carrying on when all he wants is to be at home with her and not have to be faffing around with this broken computer in Shadow Control.
Seems fine.
Good. We've got one of our computers working. Now you've got to fix the other 15 before you go home.
Good night. Oh, and thanks, fellas.
I'll repay you by giving you rubbish jobs and sticking you on a submarine. I'm trying to think what other Anderson show would benefit from an episode like this, and I think certainly the fact that there was never a backstory for Space Precinct of any kind is probably a point against that show. But I can't imagine any of the other series would be able to pull off a how it all began, how everything was set up type episode with the skill that this one does, because you know, maybe Thunderbirds with the emotional core, you know, of the story being Jeff's wife.
Why aren't you in bed?
Dying.
I was waiting for you to come home.
But there isn't really that emotional core to the other series that would make a story like this worthwhile.
Where have you been?
You know I can't tell you.
Oh, for God's sake, Ed, break the bloody rule just for once and tell me. I'm your wife.
And you know I can't tell you.
Every single time I want him to tell her, I just want this to all go well for both of them, because
What's more important to you, me? Or whatever you do until 3 o'clock in the morning?
I can feel for both of them. I can see where both of them are coming from, and it is heartbreaking.
I love you. I'm going to have your child. When he's born, will he have a father? Or a man he hardly knows? Someone he sees?
And there aren't many there aren't that many Jerry Anderson episodes that you can say that about.
You still have a choice, Ed. Perhaps you should decide before it's too late.
I don't know if the fact that this is such a one-off episode in that respect makes it more successful. If they'd done more like this, maybe this one wouldn't have seemed so special. But... oh,
Well, the control complex is complete.
I just love this.
All we need now are the technicians.
How are the first batch of recruits making out?
The original 50 have been whittled down to 8.
8?
Yes. Second batch seem to be doing a little better.
We've killed off the 42 who didn't pass, of course. That goes without saying. Our security people are very sharp on that point.
Spring. My son will be born in the spring. Your son, how
did that happen? How did you have a son, Ed? How does that work? That's another moment. I would love to know what Alec was going to say. Your son, how did that... All I can think is, how did that happen? How do you make babies, Ed? And for all of Mary's unwarranted concern that Ed was having an affair, we now find him in a car park meeting Nina Barry in secret, being watched by a suspicious little chap with a notepad. And of course there was another deleted scene here where Keith Ford is a TV interviewer interviewing Nina Barry and some other person who's talking about flying saucers, and he recruits Ford and Nina as a result of that show. I always found it very odd that that Keith Ford was recruited to SHADO for being a TV host, but oh yeah, I suppose he did well in the end. Private investigator is keeping a log on all Straker's hours. He's spending a lot of time at Nina's flat, but of course he's not alone in there. We have
Well, it's been a long, hard
Alec, and
but we're ready.
Joan is on the floor there. She doesn't get any lines in this episode. I think that's the only time in the series you see her without the purple wig.
I know how hard you've all worked.
And Nina, and Masters, and Ford, and Maxwell.
Is over. And I want to thank you all.
So we can assume from that these are the people who are, these are key members of SHADO. These are the ones who put so much in the early days. In that case, it's rather interesting the way Straker ultimately rewards them, because obviously Alec is his best mate, that's not an issue. But he sticks Nina and Joan on the moon. He sticks Masters and Maxwell at the bottom of the ocean on a submarine. And he keeps Ford around, mostly to yell at.
Mary?
Which is all, I found that all very amusing. I think it's also rather, it rather sort of increases the sadness that none of those characters were around in the show's later days, except for Nina. And even sadder.
I'm leaving you, Ed. My mother had you followed. You were followed to the flat. But the girl, he even had a photograph with the time, everything.
But Mary, darling, I can explain it to you.
I don't want to hear.
Please, just listen to me, will you?
Now, just give me my case.
You're not going anywhere. You're going to stay right here and listen.
And I love that when Straker just finally loses it, and he's like, no, you are just... Oh.
All right. Go on, Mary. All right, I'll tell you everything.
Yes, do it, tell her. Please. Please. And I think that maybe crosses the line, but in a moment of intense emotion and total despair, it's understandable. It's not forgivable, but it's understandable. Unfortunately, it's all too much for Mary. She's tumbled down the stairs and it's off to the hospital in the ambulance. And interestingly enough, Mary's father, who was there when she fell, Straker let him in just after she fell, he's not with them in the ambulance. And yet when they enter the hospital itself, he's there with Straker and Mary suddenly. It's teleporting Dad. He was not in that ambulance, and then suddenly he's there. If only his magic teleporting powers had passed to Mary, none of this would have happened.
Your wife has an internal hemorrhage. They take her into the
Luke
theatre.
Carpenter from Neighbours? What are you doing here?
Now, Doctor, if you have to choose between my wife and...
I understand.
But wait, I wasn't finished. And it's raining, because it would be raining. Oh, even that thunder sound effect has showed up to make Straker's day even more rubbish than it already was. Poor guy.
It's a boy.
And here's Lou Carpenter again. Dr. Lou Carpenter.
How is she, Doctor?
As well as can be expected.
She'll be all right.
Yes.
When can I see her?
Well, when she wakes
I
up.
also love that this actor, Tom Oliver, later appeared again as a shadow bomb disposal person in Sound of Silence. It makes me think that Straker gave him that job as like, you know, thank you for looking after my wife and my son. I could use a man like you in my organisation. It's the same with the nurse in Question of Priorities. She later ended up working on the moon base. And here we have that wonderful moment of Straker waving at his son. Oh, but of course the nurse walking past embarrasses him. And I find it a really ghoulish moment, that, because we are seeing Straker seeing his son for the very first time, but no matter what order you see this episode in, whether you see it in broadcast order or production order, we know where that little baby's life is gonna go. We know from the very first moment that Straker lays eyes on him. We know something he doesn't, and it's just another moment of horribleness.
Where's Ed?
Ed said he had to go. He said he couldn't tell me why.
And then there's that, just to make it all even more sad.
You just get well again, and we'll sit down quietly with your mother and have a chat.
Oh, poor Mary. It's all fallen apart, and she'll never know why. And even the birth of her son isn't gonna...
Sorry about this, Ed.
Ultimately isn't going to...
You know I wouldn't have done it if it hadn't been absolutely necessary.
Bring her long-lived joy, because, again, we know what happens to that baby.
Congratulations.
But it's cigar time again, leading us back to the present day in Shadow Control.
There's too much cigar smoke around here, Alec. Tell somebody to turn on the fan and get rid of it.
You feeling okay, Ed? Next you'll be saying we need less coffee machines.
Lieutenant Gray.
Yes, sir.
Take a week's furlough starting now.
But, sir...
That's an order.
Right, sir.
And some people have said that it's a bit odd, considering how much this episode focuses on characters and backstory, that the Shadow operative who just became a father is a guy we'd never seen before and would never see again. Which I suppose makes a kind of sense, but I prefer to think of it as the fact that we saw so many of the regular characters were there at the beginning of Shadow. Freeman, Ford, Masters, Maxwell, Nina, and Joan. And it the fact that it's not them who had the kid kind of suggests that they too had to sacrifice so much in order to get Shadow up and running. Well, I can't imagine anyone having to sacrifice as much as Straker did, but certainly they would have had to, you know, they could have had any number of failed marriages and relationships. We'll never know, but it's just something to think about. Anyway, that was Confetti Check A-O.K, and it's one of my not only favourite UFO episodes, but probably favourite Jerry Anderson episodes of all time. And there's not a single model vehicle, there's not a single explosion, just characters and backstory and, oh, good stuff all the way. I can't imagine UFO would have been able to do much more, any sort of similar episodes like this, unless we did an episode where, I don't know, the story of how Straker bought his car. But, yeah, going back to the early days of Shadow, wonderful stuff, and of course, utterly heartbreaking, the destruction of Straker's marriage.